Never buy a motorcycle without a test ride. Have you heard that before? Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. This is a motorcycle channel where you'll find test rides, tips and fixes, and all the latest biking news. I've got a website, RevelatorAlf.com. There's lots of blogs and vlogs and all the latest motorcycle news and specs on there as well. So go check that out. Never buy a motorcycle without a test ride. That's the simple answer when you're thinking about buying a bike. But I already hear the counter argument here. Say, hold on a minute. What about if a motorcycle demo bike isn't available? What about if the deal to buy a motorcycle is just so good that you just can't pass it up? So let's just make a distinction here between the different kinds of buys, as it were. Okay, so let's say a brand new motorcycle from a dealership. Now, usually they will have a demonstrator motorcycle of that particular bike. Now, if they don't, the best advice would be to shop around other dealerships to see about that particular model that you're interested in, so that you could go and test ride it. Now, it might mean that you have to travel a few miles, or in some cases a few hundred miles, just to get a test ride of that particular bike. Now, you can ride similar bikes from the same family, as it were, from a particular motorcycle manufacturer, and that may suffice to satisfy whether you'd like this bike or not. But really, if you're going to buy a brand new motorcycle, you really want to test that motorcycle and not something that's almost the same. You get where I'm coming from. So if you can't test a brand new motorcycle, maybe the dealership just doesn't have a demo bike for you, and maybe there is another dealership for miles and miles and miles. What about trying to test ride a used version of that bike? Now, it may not have exactly the same feel or the same performance as a brand new motorcycle, because there might have been upgrades to the engine and suspension and braking, for example. However, that'll be your best bet. You'll have a really good idea whether this overall bike would suit your needs. Let's just talk about a used bike. Now, it could be from a dealership, it could be from a private sale, it could be from a workshop that are selling bikes, whatever it is. The fact is that a used bike will reduce in value with the more miles that it has on it. So motorcycle salesmen are going to be kind of reluctant to let you have a go on a bike or test ride a bike that they're trying to sell with a minimum amount of mileage on it. So I get that completely. But then again, it comes down to, if you've never ridden this kind of bike before, you don't really know if it suits you. And also, as it's a used bike, and especially if it's out of warranty, you don't know if there's any issues on this bike that you might be able to detect on that first test ride. So the test ride is really valuable, not only for a brand new bike to see if it suits you, but also a used bike to see if you can discover any issues with it. Any issues that the unscrupulous salesman hasn't told you about, or is not even aware of themselves. Let's just talk about some motorcycles that are at a budget price. Now, a lot of motorcycles can be bought online right now. There are no physical dealerships. They just have an online portal where you can buy those motorcycles, and they might cost you £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, dollars, shekels, whatever it is. Well, you really are taking a bit of a risk here, because you don't really know. You don't know if that bike is going to be suitable for you. So the best thing to do is hold fire on these purchases. Wait until you can get to a motorcycle show, a motorcycle event, a trade show, and see if those motorcycles are there for sale or they're on show. Then at least be able to sit on one and see if the ergonomics of the bike suit your riding style. Now, if the purchase price of these bikes, of these new bikes, is really cheap, then you may want to think, well, I'll just go for a punt. I know it's a 125, it's a 250, it's a small bike. I know it's going to be only for a short period. It doesn't really matter how it rides because they're all very similar in terms of performance. Therefore, I'll take the punt. I know it's a new bike and away we go. You're going to get a warranty with it. And if something goes wrong, you can just send it back to the shop or to the dealership or to the online place where you bought it from and get your money back. Okay, so what about a used motorcycle that's got lots and lots of miles on it? And let's say it's a private sale or even from a dealership that has taken this bike in on trade. Now, here's where you really want to test ride this bike, because you really don't know what the overall history is, how it's been ridden. but you also need to find out at that point in time whether it's going to be a rideable bike or not. So if you're trying to buy a bike that you want to ride immediately, then again, you need to test ride that bike to see if it suits you or if there are any issues that you can detect. However, if this bike is something that you're going to strip apart, work on, maybe improve, then you may only be interested in certain aspects of that bike. Let's say you might be only be interested in the engine, you might only be interested in the frame. Everything else you're going to discard. So it really depends what you're particularly interested in and have an inspection of that. If it's only the engine you're interested in, then really all you need to do is make sure that that engine is running and see how you feel about it, if it's got any nasty sounds, whatever. However, if you're going to strip that engine apart, it comes back down to, well, it doesn't really make any difference so much if that engine is running or not. However, you still want to try and buy the best possible version of that bike that you can possibly get for the money. So therefore, having a running engine, having a working bike is much better than having a non-running bike. Now, most dealerships, when buying a new bike or a nearly new bike, will be able to offer you a test ride on a demo bike or on a used bike. And those rides are invaluable to determine whether the bike suits you or whether there's any issues that you might encounter on that ride. You really don't know until you ride that particular bike that you're interested in whether it's going to suit you. Now, some salesmen out there, they might say to you, oh, this is on the same frame, this is on the same chassis, it's very similar. It might be very similar, but it's not the same ride that you'll get on the bike that you eventually want to buy. It might be similar, but it could be different. And it could be different in braking, could be different in suspension. Just the way it rides and the way it sounds could be completely different to you. Now, of course, some people will just like the look of a bike, will like the look of a brand and say, I want that bike, it's a brand new bike, I'm going to buy it. In fact, many people do. In that they'll pre-order a bike. A new model is coming out next year, let's say, I'm going to pre-order that bike. However, usually they're already riding a motorcycle from that brand. Let's just say if you ride a Harley Davidson, you want to pre-order a CVO or something, well, maybe you're already riding a CVO or a touring bike or whatever it is. So you're already familiar with the brand, so you're looking for a development of that bike and also possibly an improvement of that bike that you already ride. So therefore it's not that much of a stretch just to pre-order and wait for that to come in before you can test ride it. Now, some dealerships and some salesmen may say to you, whether it's on a new bike or a used bike, to say, well, you know, if you don't like it, now there might be a way to get your money back. In fact, it depends on the country. There is a certain time period where you can get your money back as well, if there's something wrong with the bike or also if you don't really like it at all. Some motorcycle salesmen might say, well, we're not going to let you test ride this used bike, but if you don't like it after you've bought it, we'll give you your money back. Again, read the fine print here, and I would stay away from those kinds of deals. If they're not willing to let you test ride the bike for whatever reason, or they want you to test ride the bike with strings attached, walk away from that deal, because trying to get your money back from a dealership or from a salesman after the sale is going to be a lot harder than actually just walking away from the deal and finding a bike elsewhere. Now, for most people, as I say, they will want to test ride a bike beforehand, but some won't, or some will not have the opportunity, or some will be looking at next year's model and they just want to pre-order it now, especially if they believe it's a limited supply. They think, I'm going to put my money down now and I will be riding that bike, and that's entirely up to you. But for most people, if you can test ride that bike, even if it's a mile down the road or a couple of miles down the road, you'll get a good feel for whether the bike is a riding bike, something that you can get used to, and something that you feel that you'll want to continue with the purchase or want to walk away from it. But for me, I would never want to buy a bike that I want to ride without test riding it first of all. If it's a bike that I know I'm going to be working on or stripping apart, it doesn't really bother me that much, especially if I'm going to be breaking apart an engine or something like that. However, if it's a riding bike I'm looking for, if it's a bike that I'm buying because I'm going to be doing a lot of miles, I want that bike to be in tip-top condition. So for me, I would never buy a bike without test riding it first. But as I say, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video useful. Don't forget to like and share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. And don't forget to check out the website RevelatorAlf.com for all the latest biking news. And I'll catch you again. Bye. Bye now. RevelatorAlf.